Hello? 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 Hello?
Good evening, DSU student body and faculty. For those who aren't aware, tonight we're having a debate for the position of Vice President um, FO. I'm sorry.
Finance and operations.
Finance.
Finance and operations. Thank you very much. I'm really sick. This has been fun. For those who aren't aware, there is a debate tonight. If we could just have a little bit of audience decorum, as in just don't have any loud conversations, that would help the candidates be able to answer the questions. Before we get started, here are a few announcements. First and most important, we recognize that we are holding this debate on unceded, unsurrendered Mi'kmaq land. Second, we would like to thank Howe Hall for allowing us to host this debate here in the Cameron Dining Room, as well as Tech for allowing it to be broadcasted across the campus. Tonight, this debate is about the discussion of ideas and actions that will help make the DSU and, more importantly, the students have a positive time here at Dalhousie University. Each candidate here is running to help improve the well-being of all students here at Dal. There will be agreement and disagreement here on stage on how to achieve these objectives. Candidates have every right to disagree and argue about ideas and actions, and we encourage healthy debate. We do not encourage attacks on each other or other groups of people in a way that is discriminatory or offensive. Those who attempt to engage in this behavior, including those in the audience, as deemed by the moderator or members of Elections Committee, will not be tolerated. In addition, candidates must address the moderator in their responses. Candidates cannot engage other candidates or members of the audience. Candidates are not to cut off other candidates and must wait for the moderator to address questions to them. Questions will be taken from the audience and read by the moderator. Questions can also be submitted in advance via this online web form. Audience are to be silent except for cheering and clapping. Spokespeople for referendum campaigns can opt to deliver a short speech before the commencement of debates. All candidates are obligated to follow university policy as well as municipal, provincial, and federal laws in the course of campaigning as per DSU elections policy. Now, if we have anybody from Ennisburg or CKDU who would like to come up and make an announcement, they can do so now.
Hi, everybody. My name is Francella. I'm Programming Director at CKDU. CKDU is the campus radio station at Dalhousie University. We are located on the fourth floor of the Dalhousie Student Union building. We are looking for $1 increase of our levy. We have had a levy increase since we started in 1985. Probably most of you were not even born yet. So we haven't received a levy increase in 33 years. And we're hoping to do that to hire more students, create more student podcasting opportunities, and to be more relevant to youth votes. So please consider supporting CKDU in the upcoming election.
Thank you. And do we have a spokesperson from Ennisburg to come up and speak?
Oh. Oh, he's here. Do you,
If they're not here at this second, we'll give them an opportunity to speak later on. So now on to the debate itself. All candidates have read the rules for the debate and agreed upon them before participating. Candidates will get 2 minutes max for opening statements. Questions will be asked by myself based on questions I have written or been presented to me by the student body. A question will be asked to one of the candidates. The candidate will get 60 seconds to respond. Every other candidate will get 60 seconds to rebut or respond. Then will be a max 5-minute discussion between the candidate on the issue of the question if need be, and follow-up questions by myself if need be. Candidates will be respectful to others during the speaking time. The order of candidates giving opening statements has been determined at random. Ryan, you are first.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm very grateful the privilege that I have here today of speaking in front of all of you and running for VPFO. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a third-year finance major at the business school. And being in the business school, we have the co-op program, and I've done 2 co-op programs up to this point and accumulated a lot of skills and competencies that I think would be very effective and in executing the role of VPFO and really helping the student union achieve its goals, as well as helping all students and all the various student organizations that we have in this great university here. Most importantly, as well as my qualifications, that I have a great passion for problem solving and working with others to achieve a common goal, and something I think I do very well. I've been involved in the business school with DECA U, the case competition that we went to Ontario last year, and with the Dallas group, as well as the Atlantic Throwdown case competition, which will be where we will be competing against the various other maritime schools this later in the month. And a lot of the skills that I have can be really well applied to solve some of the issues that I've identified with the student union and running some of the operations and financial matters with the union over the past year. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, and thank you.
Thank you. Liam, you are next.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, cool. My name's Liam. Thank you for coming. It's great to see people actually come, be interested in this. The DSU is really important, and it's good to know that people are intrigued by it. I guess, yeah, just as Ryan said, a little bit about myself, a little bragging probably. I am currently a fourth-year Bachelor of Science econ with a minor in commerce at Dal. I moved here from the Yukon, so I've come a long ways away to be here, and I have a huge passion for Dal and for helping the students here at Dal. I have a huge passion for people and for money, and I want to combine the two by making sure that people understand money, understand finance and budgeting, and for their own personal finances, so when they graduate Dal with more than just a degree. I want them to have life tools and skills that are beneficial to how they succeed in life. Work experience-wise, I've managed my own investment portfolio since I was 18. This past year, I just finished one of my investment portfolios did their final fiscal year, and it was a 51% return, which is pretty great, I'd say. So I'm pretty happy about that. I've done 3 work terms, one with the Yukon government, where I was part of a cost reduction strategy team to save up to $50,000 per year for my department, and we ended up actually saving $100,000 per year. So it's pretty great. All that money went back into community work and creating better, safer roads and transportation. And I just did a work term in the Yukon again, where I was the economic analyst for a small company that's innovating a new innovative water treatment system. And I was their analyst for their own finances and also their future analyst for if their product would actually be profitable and how it would affect the environment in the Yukon. So yeah, just a little bit about myself, my experience, and I'm excited for more questions after.
Thank you. And Chantal.
Hi, folks. My name is Chantal Corey. I am the current Vice President of Finance and Operations, and I am seeking re-election. I am in my 5th year, and I'm a management and sustainability student with a minor in French. And I'm just going to speak about my experience briefly. So I am the VPFO. I kind of hit the ground running last year, and I got thrown into an organization that isn't perfect, and I've been working tirelessly with the other execs to really mend a lot of the issues that have come forth. But you can't really do that in a year. And I've been given the opportunity to really understand the policies that really make the union and the students that make the union as well. I've had the opportunity to work with the Department of National Defense as a business planning coordinator. And that was a lot, just coming into an organization and taking initiative just as an outsider on just their policies and platforms and writing business plans for the largest federal government operation was incredible. My school experience, I'm a management student, and management differs from the commerce program in the sense that you're not just managing money, you're managing people and projects. And that ties in really heavily to the Vice President of Finance and Operations role because you have 2 portfolios. You have finance, and then you have your day-to-day operations. And you do go over your finances at the end of the month, but you're on operations every day. And operations are anywhere from food justice work to ensuring that societies have the adequate resources to run their programming. And I have that skill from my past work experience as well as my program. My sustainability portfolio, the sustainability program is taught in such a way that it's done so through a problem-based learning framework. So you're taught to put yourself in a position where you're always looking for problems, even if they haven't come up yet. And I've been able to use those skills throughout this job this year. And I've identified a lot of issues that I haven't been able to solve fully, but I want to implement for next year. And I want to finish what I got started.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to questions. Candidates get 1 minute to answer questions. At 10 seconds, my hand goes up. At 5 seconds, it starts to count down, and at that point, I will cut you off. So, Liam, this first question is for you. Why are you the most qualified for this position?
It's a great question. It's hard to compete with somebody who's the current VPFO, I won't lie. But I will say that my own personal work experience and my own personal advocacy history has really made a good combination for me currently. When I was in high school, I had to fight against the Catholic Church that I went to school, and I had to fight for my own rights, where I was discriminated against and I was bullied by the administration, not students. That led to me winning the TD National Anti-Bullying Award, and from there on, I've really held advocacy as really important for me. Secondly, my work experience I've mentioned before, I've been an economic analyst for a company. I have done my own investment portfolios that are still doing quite well to this day. And I have also done Yukon government position jobs. So I just don't want to sound like a broken tape recorder and say it all over again. So that, for me, those are things that I find I can easily use the things that I have gained and used in those positions to the position of the VPFO. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, so just to touch on some of the specifics of why I think I possess the skills necessary to really execute this job well. I worked at my previous co-op in the finance department of a company called PaySafe, which is a up-and-coming financial technology company. I was the junior financial analyst in that department, and I really got substantial exposure to the to managing financial records and creating budgets. Everything, skills and knowledge is extremely relevant to this position. And in addition to knowing the technical aspects of the job, I really learned how to cultivate a culture of teamwork and really various perspectives that you need to work with when you're going to be working in an organization that is as diverse as the student union, and bringing people together and working towards a common goal. So yeah, I think I'm the most qualified.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I think I'm the most qualified because I started from the ground up. I've been part of this community my entire life. All 5 of my siblings have gone to Dal, and this has always been my home. But in my first year, I was part of a Level D society, and I was a part of that for a couple of years. And then in my 4th year, I had the opportunity to work in the union, and then here I am now. Like, I've seen it from all aspects of the student experience. I've struggled as a student. I was on academic probation my first year, and I needed the union to kind of like uplift me and provide me with opportunities. And like now I'm on the dean's list. Like, there's just I've really been there from like every different aspect, and I feel as though I've had a lot of perspectives from all my experience that I can bring to this portfolio and that I brought this year, and I want to continue that and yeah, finish what I got started.
Thank you. I'm now going to read a statement from Elise, who is not here. I am the most qualified for this position due to my previous experience in the area. I was the VP Operations for 2017 of the local Halifax chapter of my International Women's Fraternity, and now I'm the current VP Finance of this chapter. Both positions have consisted of sitting on Executive Council, much like the DSU. So we'll move on to the next question, and Ryan, you'll answer this one first. What is the greatest issue that the VP of Finance and Operations is in charge of, and how do you plan to address it?
Yeah, sure. From my diagnosis of the role and how it has to be executed, I think the greatest issue facing VPFO currently and going into next year is the communication relation with the various student societies that really represent the students very well and are really the lifeblood of the student extracurriculars on campus. I think some increased frequency with the consultation with the various student-run organizations, whether that be faculty level or below, needs to increase. I think the dialogue is not where it needs to be from who I've spoken to on the ground, and I think that really needs to be addressed, and I would certainly do that if I was elected into VPFO.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
I'm number 1 or number 3.
No, we're just.
Oh, we're just going. Oh, okay, cool. No, okay, cool. Okay, cool. The biggest issue, again, the VPFO holds a huge portfolio, finance and operations, like people, projects, and finance. And I think the biggest way to really deal with that is just hire more students. We need to increase accountability in this role, and we can do so by bringing more students into the union, paying them for their time, getting them engaged with the budget, and giving them a reason to get engaged with the budget. And that also increases like social ownership of the union, because we are, okay, this is gonna sound cheesy, but we are for the students and by the students. We only take money from students, and we are only here to serve you. And that's it at the end of the day. And social ownership has been a huge issue, and a lot of people don't feel like they can see themselves in the union, and they can't participate. And like that barrier is huge. But once you get in, it's kind of an insider's club. But the problem is getting people in the first time, and paying them for their time, and giving them, just a reason to get involved.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, it's making the budget applicable to students. I've talked to a lot of students on campus, and they don't even know what the DSU really does, let alone what the budget is and entails. So really getting the budget to do things and to be more part of programming that students really feel is necessary. Making investments in things that students really feel that they see. For me, I would want to make a long-term 3 to 4 year financial plan that the DSU uses data and input from students throughout my tenure to get an understanding of what students really need and how we can get there. And when you ask students what they need, and then you show them that you're actually putting in a budget and you're telling them you're actually putting it in a timeline, they actually feel part of it. They feel, as Chantal was saying, they feel like there's a social aspect to it. They're being part of this community to build this together because we are for the students. So to sum it up, I guess, is long-term financial planning is the most important thing for this position.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And now I'll read an answer from Elise. The greatest issue I will be in charge of, if elected, is the budget and allocating funds. I experienced the same struggle on a smaller scale in my position of VP Finance, as I'm currently revisiting the budget for the next fiscal year. So now, Chantal, this question will go to you first. What is the biggest personal challenge that you will face if you're holding the position of Vice President of Finance and Operations?
Cool. I'm going to speak to my experience this year, and outreach has always been a problem, not just this year, for years past. And I've been here for a year, and I feel like I've done a great job at reaching out to societies, individuals, the general community, but we can always do better, and we have the resources to do that. Money is political, fun fact, and we need to reach out and follow up. We give $59,000 approximately in grants every single year, but are we reaching out to students at the end of the day and asking them if that's meeting their needs, if that's giving them the opportunity to increase their university experience. And we're not following up on with people. Reaching out is one thing, but following up is just so much more profound. And I think we can do a much better job in outreach by just following up. Thank you.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
I'll probably sound like a copycat, but I was going to say consultation, so she stole that from me. But also part of the consultation is talking to the societies about what they need. When I was at the Dalhousie Engineering Society, their president was telling me that their auditing process is very difficult, and it's very hard for them to actually get through their auditing process without really wanting to pull all their hair out. So one thing that I think would be a personal challenge for me is trying to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. This is part of consultation, but I guess I'm breaking it down a little bit more so I don't sound like a copycat to Chantal. But it is important. If you're like a society where you have money coming in from all sorts of different directions, it can be hard to come together in a week or 2 weeks period of time and try and figure out your accounting and your auditing process. So I want to make sure that there's clear communication between societies and the people doing their accounting every month to make sure that they're in the right direction. So when accounting season comes, they're not kind of pinned in a corner trying to get their life together.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, so since the mandate of the VPFO is so broad and touches so many aspects of the student life and the operation of the student union, I think the best or the most important challenge that I will have in actually executing what the vision I'll have for the finance and operations of the DSU will be is actually just communicating with the other executives as well as the council members, and then, as sort of already mentioned, reaching out to the individual societies and consulting exactly what it is they need on an ongoing basis. If allowable, it's going to be a very demanding mandate. So seeing if over the course of the year, how have we lived up to their expectations for their funding and other initiatives that they feel that we may have overlooked initially, and that we think that we could probably implement to a greater effect over the course of the year.
Thank you. And now I'll read Elise's statement. The biggest challenge I will face in this position is being able to speak for all students. All students have different issues with respect to financial and operational aspects of the union. All right, so we'll move on to the next question. Liam, you will answer this one first. How will you reach out to all members of the student union with your position as Vice President of Financial and Operations?
It's a great question. We have multiple campuses at Dal, so it can be a little difficult. I just came back from Sexton yesterday. Not just came back, but I was at Sexton yesterday. And I learned a lot, because I had not ever actually really been there. And it was a mind-opening experience, because I learned a lot of the struggles. Like, they don't have microwaves, which is something that I would not have thought was a problem. But yeah, they need microwaves, and they need extension cords, and they need things more than just food, which I thought was the obvious one. So for me, I'd want to have at least once a month, have office hours in the DSU office down there, just sit there for a couple of hours, so students can actually just come and talk. We can make plans, we can figure out what they want, and it'd be really beneficial to my long-term plan that I want for the finances, so I can actually get input from students, and I'm there asking them. It's not going to be through email that can be avoided. Also, I want to make sure that there's once a month Skype calls to the agricultural campus DSU representative, because it's important that they also don't get forgotten. Just make sure that we're on the same page and that we can do something and that we can communicate, maybe do events together. But those are really important. We can't forget about Truro. So,
Thank you.
oh, I can't. Oh,
Ryan, same question.
So given that, one of the problems I kind of identified with the student union is that the student body, although not everyone can kind of come and talk to you on an individual basis. There's obviously too many students. You talk to the students through the representatives, either on council or through the various student societies that they're members of. So I think the greater increasing the number of student societies that are ratified and can get funding, which is a major issue that I've found with the operations of the student union. I think I want to increase the frequency with which the society review committee meets, and as well as the grants committee, and increasing the staff that can be at the disposal of the student union to review the various societies that are applying for ratification and funding, and through that increased output, I think we can reach more students that way.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Yeah. Cool. So, actually, wait, sorry, can I have the question repeated?
Of course.
Thank you.
How will you reach out to all members of the student union with your position as Vice President of Financial and Operations?
Cool. Yeah, so fun fact, like the resources are there and they exist, but time isn't always on our side, and that's a huge struggle. Yeah, I think like one of the main things is just like hiring students from all campuses. In the past, we have had Sexton committees. We have had a group of agricultural students to consult with. And I've gone over to the agricultural campus a couple times this year, but solely for like the health plan purposes. But we really need to like institutionalize that practice, like monthly meetings on those campuses with the executives. And Sexton's more than just engineering students. Sexton is planning students, architecture students as well. And the union's going through a transition period. We've institutionalized a lot of really cool things. The bylaws were rewritten this year, and you folks can check that out on the DSU website. But we've scrapped a lot of old, outdated practices. And we acknowledge that change needs to be accountable. But yeah, hiring students earlier, paying them for their work, but institutionalizing this in the bylaws. That's what they're there for,
Thank you.
to keep us accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll read a statement from Elise. I'll reach out to all members of the student union through office hours for different campuses and consulting and holding meetings with different organizations on all 4 campuses. So now we'll move on to the next question. Ryan, you will answer this question first. How will you deal with those that oppose your specific policies or statements while holding your position as Vice President of Financial and Operations?
This one seems a little obvious to me. It's consultation is the answer. Just because someone doesn't agree with your initial policy or your vision for what the direction is going to be, you need to bring them in, or you go to them, and you see what is it specifically and the reason behind why they may not be fully supportive of the policy that you've implemented. And I think that's not only the most effective way, I think it's the only way that you can really get to a really mutually beneficial solution is through the consultation and conversation that you have with those other parties that you may not see eye to eye with.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, there were a lot of times this year as a council member and as a member of the executive where I disagreed with the general consensus, and it often went against my own beliefs. And those conversations are really important, and we need to have those arguments. And it's crucial to the democratic process. However, I failed and council failed as a body because we weren't equipped with the knowledge to make the decisions that were made at council this year. We spoke on behalf of communities that a lot of us don't belong to, and the decisions we made didn't affect us. And I think that can be resolved by just providing council and executives with that knowledge and educational resources. We can't make decisions on behalf of communities that we don't belong to. And consultation is key, but we really need like a purpose and like a meaningful purpose with consultation, because reaching out to someone because they don't agree with you is one thing, but like meaningfully understanding their perspective and their cultural beliefs and values is just so much more profound.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
And probably the same answer. I'm definitely, I was going to say listening to why people feel a certain way and why their opinions are different. Discussion is extremely important. Having an open dialogue where you can change ideas and you can learn from each other is extremely important. I've experienced that with friends of mine who are First Nations in the Yukon who've taught me a lot about reconciliation. I experienced that when I was living in China, where I learned why people actually like communism or why they like having a dictatorship. And it actually really opens my mind because I understand their perspective. And that was a wonderful, beautiful moment. I love that. I do that with all my friends, and I want people to challenge me all the time and to have opposing opinions because you grow as a human being. And we need that at Dal because we're a university and we like ideas and we like knowledge. So the most important thing is listening, understanding, and being respectful. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'll read a statement from Elise. I think the best way to address any opposition or disagreement to policies and statements is through communication. If students are unhappy with those policies or anything with respect to the DSU, I would love to meet and discuss those issues and find ways we can make sure all students are happy. So now we'll move on to the next question. Chantal, you will answer this one first. What is the biggest impact you want to make while holding this position?
Yeah, so I want to make the union a place for everyone. And honestly, I didn't see myself in the union my first year, and I really didn't see myself in the union in my second year or even my third year. And I don't even know why I really got involved in my fourth year. Paid position was why I got involved. And I think that needs to happen through policy and financial resources and just like carving out space for everyone. Budgets are about priorities, and this year I've been able to prioritize like equity and food justice. And like expanding food operations does not immediately benefit me, but it benefits the most marginalized people, the folks who need it. And a lot of students need it, no matter how you identify, and just like lowering access barriers to education. And today is International Women's Day. I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to plug that. And I'm the first woman in this position. Okay. I'm not trying to hype that up. But women weren't always allowed in these positions, and I brought a lot of really rad feminine leadership to this work. Okay.
Thank you.
Can I?
All right, Liam, same question.
For me, I mentioned briefly, I think, I haven't, so never mind. I'll introduce it. Something that Chantal has actually started initially, she's initiated, and I want to make bigger and better at DAL next year, is financial literacy workshops on campus. Because it's really important. It transcends race and sex, it transcends religion, and something that we all struggle with. It's something that we all have issues with. And it's something that I want to make sure that everybody has the answers to the questions that they ask. How do you pay off a loan? What's the pros and cons to having a credit card? What is a budget? How do you budget? How do you file your taxes? These are important things that I think I want to make sure that students have when they graduate university. They can say, you know what, the DSU helped me understand how to adult. I know I use that verb a lot recently because I'm getting older and I'm like, I need to learn how to do that at some point. But I know a lot of students are falling behind. They graduate and they have $20,000 worth of debt and they don't know how to deal with it. So I want to make sure DAL houses students graduate DAL with more than just a degree. So that'd be my biggest impact.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, sure. Liam, we touched on that. The tuition is a major concern, and yes, no one wants to be graduating with substantial amounts of debt. It's as I heard one person put it, it's like you're graduating with a mortgage. And I think, although not directly related to the everyday role of the VPFO, I think I would love to see increased pressure put upon the administration to really make an effort to lower, at the very least, freeze. But it should really be, the tuition should be lowered, and I think we must put much more effort. And I would like to really use my powers and my the mandate I have within the student union to really allow students to have their voices heard, go to the Nova Scotia legislature, because it is critical. I come from Quebec, and I know that student tuition there is much lower than it is here in Nova Scotia, and I think we should strive for that, and I would like to facilitate students to strive towards that goal.
Thank you. Now I'm going to read an answer from Elise. I would like to continue to create transparency with respect to finances across the DSU. I think students have the right to know where their money is being spent and how it directly benefits them. So now we'll move on to the next question. Liam, you'll answer this one first. If you can name one thing that is currently being done in the position of VPFO that is positive, what would it be?
Yeah, I mentioned it before, and I mentioned it again, financial literacy workshops. They are around campus, and I think Chantal's done a great job of creating and facilitating it. I want to make sure that they're even better. I want to make sure that we have different ones for different groups of people. I want to talk to DISC and International Student Center to improve and ask them questions. Do they think that these types of students want, not these types, but these students, sorry, want their own workshop because they may have different questions, especially if you're an international student. But yeah, I would definitely say that what Chantal's done there has done a pretty great job.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think the efforts, the environmental justice and food justice efforts, I think, have been very commendable. It's not necessarily in the mandate of the VPFO, but I think it's a very sound, long-term outlook that Chantal had, and is really she's gone above and beyond the call of duty in that regard, and I think that's very commendable. I also think that the budget was very well put together. We did not run a deficit this year, so I think that was another good aspect that she accomplished.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Yeah, and I'm really not trying to pimp out the woman thing, but this year was the first time we've ever paid out one of our full-time staff mat leave. It was never budgeted for, and we've had full-time staff get pregnant, and you will hire people that will get pregnant, and it's important that we have an equity policy, and we try and operate in an anti-oppressive framework, and that usually isn't the case. And this year I've really tried and prioritize that, and the exec has really tried to prioritize that, and we've had a lot of things institutionalized in like the rewriting of the bylaws. And I was able to carve out a lot of space for just like BIPOC folks that has never been prioritized in the VPFO position. And I really hope that I was able to carve out space in this position for more like women and BIPOC folks to try and like, you know, hop on in for next year or the year after. I started in this work because I saw someone like me in this work, and I hope I can do that for someone else.
Thank you. Now I'll read a statement from Elise. I think the involvement of commissioner positions is positive to give students employment on campus. These positions should be expanded to give even more student job opportunities and explore their interests in finances and operations. All right, so we'll move on to the last question that I have written. And so, Ryan, you will answer this one first. If there's one thing that's currently being done in the position of VPFO that could be improved upon, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the going back to my emphasis on really empowering the student societies, I think the sponsorship and society review process that is currently implemented is inadequate. It's a little slow, and I think it needs some reworking. Specifically, I think the policy within the grants, under the grants policy, requiring the recipient of grants or sponsorship to sort of plug the DSU as being the source of their funding, I think that's kind of unnecessary, and I don't think that students who may be apprehensive of, saying that they have received funding from the DSU for whatever reason, I don't think that should be a necessary term to them requiring or acquiring funding. They have real priorities, and they don't need to be a marketing agent for the DSU.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is the budget that the current VPFO works off of is the budget that was written by the previous VPFO, which can really jeopardize like incoming priorities off what students elected for the incoming year. And although there is an opportunity for budget revisions, that's often just to kind of offset deficits from orientation week. And there's no standard template of transparency as to how the budget's communicated. It's always just dependent on who's elected every year. And that's really unfortunate. And I want to change this through policy and just putting it in the bylaws, putting a template in the bylaws, getting it passed at council and through consultation with societies, and continuing to engage students through aspects of developing these policies and to identify priorities. Current treasurer training this year has been great, and this is the most engagement we've seen in years, or in last year at least. But that's a huge opportunity for us to plug all this consultation work and time to identify priorities.
Thank you. Thank you. And Liam, same question.
I was going to go on the idea of transparency. Right now, the DSU budget is a little hard to understand if you don't really have a lot of knowledge in accounting terms or just balance sheets in general or income statements. You have terms like technical accounts, operations, and if you're just wanting to really understand what that entails, there's no actual detailed breakdown. So as Chantal said, a better template would be wonderful. The SMU Student Association has a wonderful Excel template that we could possibly use. And it's a wonderful breakdown, color-coded, it's beautiful. And it's easy to understand because it tells you and breaks down to very good detail of what does accounts and technical and et cetera mean, so that we can be held accountable better, and that we can actually have students read it and actually better understand and be like, oh, advocacy in programming includes X, Y, and Z. Instead of trying to guess or having to email and wait for a reply, it'll just be more efficient and thus the time waste for students.
Thank you. Now I'll read a statement from Elise. Just to clarify her answer, when I originally wrote this question, I used the term negative instead of needs improvement, so that will reflect in her answer. I wouldn't use the term negative, as I think the current VPFO has done a great job implementing this. However, I think the transparency of DSU financial information could always be improved. I like to visit other methods of presentation to accurately display the budget and other financial and operational procedures so students can easily access how their money is being spent in the DSU. So now we'll move on to questions that have been submitted from students. I just want to remind students that are here that if they have any questions that they would like to submit, they can go see Kat in the back of the room. She has her hand up. She'll be taking questions. If you have any concerns about the debate that's going on, you may see Caitlin, who's also at the back of the room, or email the CRO. So, Chantal, this question is for you first. The Racial Justice Symposium, RJS, is an important resource for racialized and Indigenous students at Dalhousie University. As a VPFO candidate, how will you prioritize BIPOC initiatives with your budget?
Cool. So this year, Amina put forward to have the RJS event institutionalized by putting it in the bylaws. And this year, I'll be working on getting it into the budget, so it has to happen every year, and we've carved out space for this to happen. But at the same time, I'm going to acknowledge a lot of privilege I hold, even though I do identify as like a person of color. Like I'm white passing and I'm a cis woman, and I can't speak on behalf of a lot of communities that RJS is for. And that just needs to happen by giving folks like passing the mic and giving them a platform and everyone has a role in social justice work. And mine is not at the front of the march. I can help and I can support, but I shouldn't be the one leading the march, but I should be providing resources for those who need the space. And I will be doing so by putting it in the budget as it's going to be passed in the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
I will easily say that I'm a very privileged white man, and that my role in this would be to make sure that I consult everybody who is of color, who's Indigenous, who's Black, to make sure that the inputs into what should be the budget and how much should it cost, that their voices are heard. Because I don't know what the cost would be. I don't know. I can't take part in half of it because and I think so. It's important. I'm trying to say, like, it's important to talk and consult with those who partake in it and who value it probably much, much more than I do. I'm not saying that I don't value it, but it's key for them to be able to have this space and have this symposium. So for me, as a white privileged man, it would be to have that consultation and to talk to them, but then also as a white privileged man, to communicate that this is happening and that's important so that other white men and white women can see that it is okay to have this and to support these initiatives. So,
thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think I would very much agree with Chantal's assessment. Although I don't know what the agendas and all the priorities of the various groups that organize the Racial Justice Symposium, what their exact goals are, and they're the ones that need to be the ones who are directing the initiative and organizing their events. I'll be there to support, and when they come asking, and I go ask them, what is it exactly that you need to organize and run your events? That is the best way forward to ensure that the mission that's stated in the reason for the event is clear and it is recognized by all those who it concerns, and I'll be there to include it in the budget and make sure it's properly funded. We don't want to lowball important events. I think it's important that we really run events excellently and that we set high standards for the events that we run.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question, and Liam, you will be addressing this one first. How will you get students engaged and informed about the DSU budget?
It's a great question because it's a problem that we're all having. The budget consultations have been great this year compared to last, but still, we want more people to come. For me, I think that a great opportunity is to get to O-Week students and to tell them, introduce them to the DSU, which doesn't currently happen. I think it's great. It's a great opportunity to introduce executives and hopefully counselors, other counselors, to the students and to be like, here's the DSU. this is what we do. Come talk to us about these issues if you have them ever. And then also at that moment to talk to them about the budget, hopefully. Have a little intro, like not like a boring seminar lecture where people will fall asleep and they'll be like, I'd rather be drinking, but to have a place where they can just learn little facts about what the budget includes. And if they want to learn more, they can go there. I think it's good to start from the young first years when they come, and then hopefully work on also budget consultations moving forward, improving the amounts of times we talk to students about getting information about what they need, so that when we actually make the budget, that we have inputs from students and they feel like they're actually being heard.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think it's part of having the democratic process and the institution that is the DSU. Obviously, transparency and having the constituency understand where our priorities are and where the financing is being directed. I think it would be a little optimistic to get all first years to actively seek out and participate in the budget consultation process. But I think the best way in order to expose more people who may have an interest later on is probably increased social media presence, announcing when various stages of the budget consultation are taking place. I find before I really started considering running for DSU, I found that it was harder. The events, the meetings that would take place on consultation were not always easy to find, and it wasn't always obvious. So I think better social media when advertising the consultation process and the release of the budget.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I think like social ownership and participatory budgeting are like crucial to the democratic process, and reaching out and collaborating is important. And I think one of the easiest ways we can do that right now is like y'all go on the DSU website, look at the budget, the current budget template right here, like the 2017, 2018, and it sucks. And it doesn't really break anything down, and we really need to make it like super legible and accessible for folks, and like have feedback forms right on that webpage. Reaching out to societies, especially like Commerce Society, the MBA Society, Management Society. I'm sure they would love to like come in, tear it apart, and come back with us with feedback, as well as like other groups on campus. And I know previous VPFOs would go to annual general meetings and present the budget and collect feedback there, and I think that needs to happen again, and I think it should happen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so this will be the last question asked before we go on break. Before break, I'll also give a chance for someone from Ennisburg to come up and give their speech for the referendum. This question will also have a discussion component afterwards. So Ryan, this one will go to you first. What is your biggest priority when it comes to the DSU budget?
As I kind of sticking with my theme, my main point, it's increasing the grants and sponsorship fees or contributions to student-run societies. That can range from the faculty level all the way to levy societies. And I think currently on the DSU budget, on the DSU site, it says that 50,000 approximately is allocated to grants, and a maximum of $1,000 per year in grants can be accorded to each society. I would like to see that increased by a little bit. And obviously there would have to be some cost offsetting to account for that. But I think that would be the main area that we focus the reallocation of funds and prioritize empowering student societies.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on two things really briefly. Just like giving back in general, we hire 80 part-time students in the DSU every year, whereas some organizations of a similar size hire upwards of like 150 to 300, and that's a really easy way to just bring people in and pay them for their work. I worked upwards of 3 jobs in my undergrad, but like if I was able to like work on campus, like I would have been so much more productive, and just like being given that opportunity to like also to like display leadership in student government. And yeah, back to grants. We give out a lot of grants every year, and we can increase that. Like last year, it went from 29,000 to 59,000 this year. But I think the key to that is not increasing the budget is one thing, but also putting it in different pots. So we have a certain amount allocated for levied and faculty societies, a certain amount allocated for like equity-seeking groups and general interest society and cultural societies. And that way there's there's not competition on who's applying first, but there's a certain amount allocated for different groups and communities on campus.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
Yeah, I would definitely, for me, it's long-term financial planning. When you want to actually have a real change and really big change on campus, it doesn't happen in 12 months because sadly things don't work that quickly. Roma wasn't built in a day, and we can't really solve a lot of the big problems that Dal faces, including making it Tim's, or having more food at Sexton, or having more study space on campus. We need to collaborate with different things. We need to collaborate with the administration. We need to have more student input. For a good chunk of my first year, I'd want to get that input from students on what they want in the budget, what they feel they need, so that when I go back and I make a 4-year plan, they're able to see, okay, well, we have an idea of how we can get to these other really big topics. Because it's hard when executives continually change over every year, or at least luckily, maybe we save one for 2 years. Like that's like a hallelujah moment. It's scary, and we need to make sure that we don't have that. We need to make sure we have a budget that has student input and student data in it, so that it's hard to just scrap it, so that we can actually get to real solutions.
Thank you. So candidates, you will have 5 minutes to discuss this issue. Candidates can speak up to 45 seconds uninterrupted, and then I'll cut you off. If 2 candidates try to speak at the same time, one will go, then immediately the other will go. Anyone can begin when they're ready.
Yeah, just to expand on the priorities for the budget, and obviously since it's related to the grant policy, I'm not sure exactly what it is that the DSU was looking for when they kind of included in the terms for achieving grant when applying for grants and scholarship, why they deemed it necessary that they had to announce at whatever event that the recipient was at that the DSU funded them. I'm not sure why that was really needed in the terms. I think that it's a detriment to it lowers it makes it less likely that the applicants are going to be funded, and I think that's not what we should be striving for. So I don't know if I could ever have an executive or whoever implemented that explain that to me.
I would like to speak to that. And I think we should be proud of our union, and I think we should be proud that something that we're giving into is providing us opportunities to host student-run events. And it is standard practice for sponsorship. I've never applied. I've been on dozens of societies and community groups my entire life, and I've never applied for a sponsorship to an organization that I don't want funding I'm not going to apply to Shell in Irving to fund my environmental program. I want to be able to be proud of the people that are supporting my initiative. So I think it's important, but if the issue is being proud of our union, we can fix that, and we can remedy that elsewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, so one thing that I'm thinking about when it comes to grants and when it comes to kind of how the DSU runs is the questionnaire for the loaded ladle was interesting. They were asking, how can we make sure we have more student-led food services? I'm thinking, what if we gave out money, just a little grant to somebody who's I want to have a little bakery, so they have a table once a week, kind of like the market. I think we should reach out for more of these student-run initiatives that are also food-based, so that we get more food for students, we subsidize them, and we make sure that they're applicable, that they're accessible to students. So we're doing 2 things in once. We're giving out grants to students, and we're also including food, and I guess there's a third arm of having better access to food on campus. So I don't know if that was applicable to the conversation.
No, definitely. I think the farmers market, that's a great model to follow. It's a prime location. I think students and we talk about increasing student involvement. I think that's kind of been a theme of many of the debates that we've seen over the last few days. How do you do that? How do you actually achieve that? It's not. I would think it's not through increased awareness of the budget, because that's not very interesting. But it's getting people working with the student union, having them fund their events and operate in and around the student union. I think that's if we can increase participation in that way, that's towards a good end.
Do you want to go,
Yeah, no, I'm okay for now. I think I said what I need to say.
Actually, you know what? No, I'm good.
I was just going to say, if there's no other discussion, we will move on. So before we take our first break, if someone from Ennisburg would like to come up and give a short speech on the referendum, they can do so now.
I'm Laura. I'm a board member of NSBRG, the Nova Scotia Public Interest Research Group. We're a social and environmental justice resource center on campus. Recently, we've been awarded the Impact Award for Community Society, so we're doing great stuff. And yeah, we're running a levy increase campaign in this election. Increasing our levy would let us hire a part-time student and hire more students to do research for us. It would also increase our funding for community projects and for our working groups. Yeah, we're around campus if you want to come talk to us. Feel free to do that. And yeah, vote yes for Ennisburg.
All right, so we're now going to take a short break. Just a reminder, if you have any questions that you'd like to submit for the debate, please see Kat at the back of the room. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
All right, welcome back to the Vice President of Financial and Operations debate. I'm your moderator, Mark Joycey, and we're going to move right on to the next question, and Chantel will be the one to answer this one first. So, and this one will also have discussion. Chantel, how will you make the budget accessible to all students?
Yeah, I think like other candidates spoke to, I think we can do a much better job and just like even have it like presenting it in a booklet, like starting it off with like here are some definitions. This is what every budget line means. Having it on the website, but also like going to society AGMs, consulting with treasurers, and doing so through like things that are already there. Like we should be promoting this. August 1st when treasurer training starts, and as well as like September 30th over getting societies in for risk management training, being like, hey, did you know that these are the processes and the deadlines for these things to happen? And we can also pitch this to the university to promote this on the website and get students to get involved in the democratic process.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
Shocking. Okay, sorry. Okay. Yeah, so I think the most important part is to make it easily understood. To understand that, like, to define words like accounts and accounts and technicals, operations. Just define these so when people actually read it, they understand it. And then, as well as what Chantal was saying, having like really a clear communication to societies and people who utilize the budget and look at the budget often. It's important that societies understand where they lie in the society and understand how the DSU budget works. Because also it's a good guideline for them and to figure out how to do their budget and how to do their own finances. Yeah, going back to the communication and the look of the budget, it has to be clear for the average person who doesn't understand it. So if a person who has no accounting history can't read it or understand it, it's wrong. And we should go into make sure it's defined clearly so that we can communicate it clearly to students.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think an important initiative or direction that we can move in to kind of expand the reach of the budget and the consultation process would be to really reach out to the various faculty societies that are representing many of the students who are involved in the school, but not necessarily involved with the DSU. And obviously, whatever the DSU is doing indirectly affects them through their society, through how much funding they are receiving. So it's not even necessarily, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a mass email or a mass appeal, but targeted to people who are still very involved and care about the school, but are not necessarily in tune with the direct lines of communication with the Dalhousie Student Union.
Thank you. So candidates, you'll have 5 minutes total to discuss this question. You don't have to use all 5 minutes, of course. Candidates will get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If two candidates attempt to talk at the same time, one will go, the other will follow immediately afterwards. Please be respectful to one another. Anyone can begin.
Okay, I guess I'll start. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a broken tape recorder. Always saying the same thing, but it is important. I know I've talked to people who are engineering students. I've talked to people who are psych and neuro students. They don't just understand what the budget is. They're curious, but as soon as they actually get to the budget online, it's in a PDF form that's really just hard to understand. I think we should have the Excel there in a non-edited version. And then we should just make sure, as Chantal said earlier, just have a different template that makes it easier for students, and then have definitions of terms, because the barrier right now is too high, I think, for students to really get to access it.
I think that's an excellent point. Just having raw data on the website. I think for the more analytical among us, and maybe some of the more experienced finance students or financially inclined students that know how to look at it and maybe want to make up their own conclusions from what they see in the data. I think that'd be a great avenue. It doesn't always need to be perfectly presented for a board meeting. So I think that'd be a good initiative to really get some other critical eyes observing what's happening at the student union.
I think another important initiative is just breaking down the percentages, like what's the percentage we're spending on this department rather than this department, and making a direct comparison to student unions of similar sizes across the country and looking at their initiatives versus ours. And that's also an important initiative to see how well we're doing and and where we can improve. And the students can see how that's broken down, what other student unions are doing. That can spark new ideas and like how we can improve that. Just like giving space for that feedback loop to happen, whether that be on the website, whether that's before we get during orientation week. But yeah, just communication and just comparison.
So I have a question. I don't know if am I allowed to ask questions of like Chantal or no?
You can ask questions directed to the moderator.
Okay.
The candidate has a choice to answer or not.
Okay, cool. So I have a question then, because I know that we do, part of the VPFO's position is to perform quarterly financial reports. But I'm curious if the way that they are made and presented are similar to how an organization like, let's say, IBM or Facebook would make it. So you have an easy to read document that has main information and reasoning behind why, let's say, the Grawwood is in negative territory right now, or why certain things happen. I'm just curious if that exists right now. Maybe they should have done that for research, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, so something that we implemented this year is we reached out to all of our offices and services of the union, and we provided them with a framework of a space and a service audit, being like, what are you providing? What are your current resources, and what space are you using? And then we'll be taking that to council so we can evaluate how we can improve on those services and bringing that. And just rectifying that information. As of now, the only formal thing that's brought to council is budget revisions, which happen in October, and that's just an opportunity for us to just kind of bring forward where we're at for the year. But yeah, I think we can do a better job in just providing that for all services and offices of the union on a quarterly basis.
How much time do we have on this thing?
We have 1:30 left.
Okay. I would also just be curious to know what is the quality of the financial statements provided by by the societies, whatever faculty are levied and all that. And I wonder if we could have a maybe educational initiative to make sure that the executives of those societies know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, so we do have treasurer training, which kind of outlines what is required for a society audit, and as of now, a lot is required, from bank reconciliations, which you have to do on a monthly basis. So societies do have to be on top of their monthly financials, as well as a general ledger, just keeping track of their transactions, bank book, and that's all communicated at the beginning of the year. And every single person that attended my treasurer training this year submitted their audit and successfully passed and received their disbursement. But we could do better. Folks still fail. And this year we expanded treasurer training beyond faculty and levied societies. We did it to general interest in constituent societies that don't necessarily have to submit to me, but have that knowledge to move forward and apply for grants and be fiscally responsible.
It's 25 seconds left.
I don't know. What do you say in 25 seconds?
Then I guess we'll move on. Now we have our next question. And I believe it is Liam. You will be the one to answer this one first.
Great, cool.
So Liam, how will you advocate for trans students?
Great question. So I'm actually currently the LGBTQ rep on campus. I have a few friends of mine who are transgendered. Sadly, actually, they don't live in Halifax. They live out in Vancouver in the Yukon. And actually, one of mine is a huge civil rights advocate. I don't know if you've heard his name is Chase Blodgett. He's fought for a lot of human rights in the Yukon right now. And I have realized that actually, I don't know if people know this, but under the Canadian law, transgendered people actually do not have human rights. They're not protected. So for advocating, I'd want to bring in speakers. I'd want to bring in people like Chase Blodgett and make sure that we actually have this dialogue. And we have opportunities for people to ask questions of what is being transgender? What's the difference between transgender and transsexual? What are the issues that they face day to day? Just so people can understand that dialogue. I'm not transgendered, so I'm not going to go and talk about their issues, but I want to bring them to Dallas so they can advocate for themselves.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think the educational initiative, I think, is still very relevant, even though we are 2018, and we think that these issues are coming more to the forefront. I think a large portion of the student body is still not informed, as you said, what are the differences between some of the different identifications. And just what that translates to into real terms, I think, is just making sure that the various community representatives and organizations are adequately supported for the events that they want to run. So that means bringing in speakers, adequately funding the events that they want to put on. As I said before, I want the university to have top-notch events, bring in the best speakers, and I want the student body's experience to be better for it.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I think a few of the easy things the executive could do is advocating for gender-neutral washrooms across campus. Like, we're lucky enough to have a couple in our building, but not all of them are gender-neutral, and a lot of the paperwork involved with just even like applying to university is extremely gendered, and that can be really harmful to a lot of trans students. And in evaluating their access to services, there are a lot of things that prevent them from feeling comfortable even seeking medical help. I don't know of any current trans doctors in our health system or even in mental health services, and that's something that is so crucial to their well-being and is just often overlooked. But again, just like understanding my privilege, and I'm not the person to be like advocating, like I need to pass the mic and just kind of do the work on the side. I'm not a trans person, I don't identify to that community, but knowing how I can support them and provide them the resources to do so and advocate with their permission.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the next question. Ryan, you will go first. How will you advocate for racialized students?
Yeah, I think as I was reviewing the actually the equity hiring report prior to prepping for this interview or pardon me debate, and I did notice that there is still some of the legacies of the racist past and very inequitable treatment that racialized folks have received and still continue to receive. But I have noticed that there has been substantial progress being made, but I did notice that racialized and indigenous people are still severely underrepresented in the faculty and administration, in particular the senior manager roles that I believe it was 0% actually. So I think we need to do more to promote or push for the administration to continue with their efforts in reaching out to Indigenous communities.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I think this year our executive did a really good job at just like agitating and organizing, but we really missed out on the educational piece, and a lot of students were uninformed on a lot of decisions made, and that was really harmful to folks who belong to like racialized communities. And we can provide that as a union, and we can advocate to the university to continue to provide that. And if you folks, I urge you folks to read the Backhouse report, but it's quoted that racism is a ticking time bomb on campus. Our university was founded by a racist. I'm sorry, I said it. And he did not see a space for like colored people on this campus. He called us laborers, and that's huge. And it's unfortunate that our president continues to applaud him as an inclusive man when that's not the reality. So just like continuing to carve out space for folks and just understanding the role and just using education as a piece, as a tool and a resource for everyone.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
I think the most important part for my position as a white man is to first listen to people who are marginalized, people who are of color, people who are indigenous, people who identify as black, etc. Because for me, I've never had lived experiences of oppression due to my skin color, or oppression in general, actually. And then from there, action from what they've told me. One thing that I've been thinking about is actually thinking of kind of taking an idea that the current Canadian government used in defining their budget, which is looking at a gender equity lens. And I'm thinking, what about the idea of doing a racial equity lens on our major financial decisions at the DSU? See if programs that are being made, events that are being planned, are planned, but also take into consideration the difficulty and the marginalization of people on campus to ensure that they have access and that they can actually utilize and benefit from things that are going on through the DSU.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next question, and Chantal, you will answer this one first. How will you advocate for Indigenous students?
This was a hot topic that came up at our council a lot this year, and I'm not Indigenous. And again, the only role I could take is listening and providing resources. And I think one of the important ways that VPFO can do that, and this is something I'm building into the budget this year, but is providing just a solidarity line, just carving out space for us to hire elders at ceremonies. Like, for example, bringing them to our debates has been a struggle, knowing where to charge that, and also not having that process known. Even within our union is huge. Like, we can't say we're operating in an anti-oppressive framework if we don't even know how to support like the folks that we're trying to advocate for. So carving out that space, just financially providing the resources for that, and just like going and listening, like with their blessing. Like, folks aren't people that need to be studied and like surveyed and like collected data on. Like, they're human beings. That's the end.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
Again, I'm going to listen. I sound like a broken tape recorder, and I don't want to sound bad. But really, it's one of the best ways that as a white privileged man for me to get anywhere is to listen first. And hopefully from there, I will hear what we need to do, what the issues are. I don't know what Indigenous students on campus are really facing, what the struggles are. So I need to be there to listen, to make sure that the budget accommodates them as best as possible, so that we can have elders at our debates, that we can have more workshops that include education for Indigenous history and how it's part of being Canadian and how it is being part of the Canadian history. I was talking to somebody today how they only learned about residential schools 3 years ago. That shouldn't be happening. But if it is, and it currently is, we should have more educational programs on campus to talk about the real Canadian history, the full scope of it, so we can understand, so students see why movements of First Nations and Indigenous rights are currently going on.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think as everyone noted, that there are still extreme challenges faced by the Indigenous community in Canada and specifically at Dalhousie as well. I think that we need to really address or make people more aware of why it is that they are still so underrepresented in academia and higher levels of society. And I think it'd be important to bring in some Indigenous speakers and see what is happening on the ground and what is the root cause of why they are continue to be very underrepresented in the upper echelons of society in the university. I think it's very, it will go a long way to improving the reconciliation process if we can educate the rest of the population further on why they continue to be underrepresented.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the next question. I just want to make a quick announcement. So replacing our wonderful cat for question taking is now going to be Ian at the back of the room. Ian is waving his hand right now. So if you have any questions, go see Ian. So this will be the next question. Like I said, this one will have discussion afterwards. And Liam, you're first. How will you improve the financial accountability of the DSU?
Right. Again, I really do emphasize transparency. It's really redundant. And you're probably bored of hearing me, but that's okay. I'm going to say it again. I really do want to have more detail and a better template for our current budget, so students actually can create and ask questions about why are we spending so much money on this event or on this programming or this thing. I'm not being afraid of looking at the budget and being like, you know what, I don't get it, I'm walking away. That barrier really makes it hard for people to even just keep us accountable, because when we make financial decisions based off of students' fees and students' money, but we make it very hard for people to track down where that money's going, it's hard for transparency and for accountability to be present in the DSU. So again, emphasize transparency in that template. Again, SMU, Student Association, check it out. It's a wonderful template that I would love to use, Adele.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, please?
Of course. How will you improve the financial accountability of the DSU?
Yeah, I think what that really entails in real terms is ongoing updates, frequent updates on what the situation is with accounts and the financial state of the student union, as well as just making the descriptions in the financial statements more accessible and readable for all, And in general, just the constant communication with the electorate, as well as other executives and other society leaders, which would just make the whole process much more accountable and much more representative of students' needs and desires.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly speak to the current measures that we have in the DSU, and then just like how to improve on them. So like we currently adhere to like a qualified opinion by a third-party accounting firm, and that's just like a standard of just accounting procedures, and it's pretty standard across the line for student unions to adhere to that. And we do post that to our website and our council packages, and that is circulated, I believe, by September 30th every year. And we do our monthly cash flow reports to make sure we're not just like dropping tens on or whatever on a week. I don't know what the lingo is nowadays. But we can post that, and we can post that to the website, and we can also expand council's mandate and just like post like reporting on this more often. Like quarterly is cool, but like we could do this on a monthly basis. Like we have all the things to do it, and we can educate council on how to read that and how to like distribute that to their constituents.
Thank you. So candidates, again, you'll get 5 minutes to discuss. You don't have to use the whole 5 minutes. Candidates get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. 2 candidates attempt to speak at the same time. One will go, the other will immediately follow. Candidates, please be respectful on stage. Anyone can begin now.
Can I start? Okay, cool. So yeah, something that Chantal touched on is the idea of having like a statement on our cash flow or our quarterly report. But I would also emphasize including reasoning why certain things are being purchased or certain reasons why there is an excess cash flow, or just because it makes sure that people understand, they see something and they can guess. You can read a cash flow statement, you make guesstimates of why decisions were made. But it's always good to just have a list of reasoning. When you read a quarterly report by a company, they will tell you why there was issues with the department X or department Y. So it's good to have that clarification and to make sure that when people read it, they don't have to guess, but they can actually see why. Yeah. That was redundant, but okay.
Yeah, I think that's it's a good approach. I think and how to execute that would obviously entail, I think, a hiring of extra hands to help out with the work. That's obviously an extra level of due diligence that has to be performed, and that would probably go a long way to not only increasing the financial accountability, but increasing the student participation within the student union and the process.
I don't know if this is because I'm a Capricorn, but I'm like micromanaging all these ideas in my head. But yeah, that's all fun and cool. But at the same time, like we really do got to keep it concise, and like that information can be posted elsewhere. But like service reports are one thing, but like financial reports, and like they do intertwine. But like I think we really got to keep it concise and like specific to what students are looking for, because we're not trying to overwhelm them with information, because that's kind of what you get when you go onto the DSU website right now. But yeah.
Well, I would just say that putting the more information, we're not forcing them to look at it. I think it's just as long as whoever is interested, they have that option to view it, and if they want to go the extra mile and review all the files that are on the DSU website, they have that opportunity.
Yeah, I will say that currently on the DSU, when it comes to financial, at least from what I've found, there's not a plethora of knowledge. There's like the budget and the budget revisions, and maybe I should do some more research, but I didn't see a lot more. There's a quarterly report section as well. But I think it is, as he's saying, like if we, as Ryan was saying, not he, Ryan has a name, is that if we do present the data and the information and make it just easy to read and not super, jargony, financial jargon, I don't think it's a bad idea. And I think it would really be useful for students who are really curious.
How much more time do we have, moderator?
2 minutes, 24 seconds.
Okay. Yeah. So the more the better. But I think we can do a better job in just kind of like divvying up that information. Yeah. I'm not really sure where I was going with this.
I think we're all like agreeing.
Yeah,
that
6:40.
I think we're all just tired. And
It's Thursday.
Saying one thing 3 different ways. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Woo.
Well, if there's no more discussion on that, then we will move on to the next question. So the next question, Ryan, you'll answer this one first, and this will have discussion afterwards. How will you build the DSU's investment portfolio up again?
Well, I think given that the investment portfolio is there to ensure the financial stability in, I believe the quote is, uncertain times, although I'm not sure what that exactly entails given that we're a student union and we don't have a lot of uncertain cash flows. Priority, what would really go into that would be focus on fixed income and very regular cash flow and keeping the investment portfolio safe and securing the long-term future of the student union, but not short selling or not missing an opportunity for substantial growth as well. I think that would also be jeopardizing the long-term future as well if we miss out on opportunities. But overall, the main purpose of it is to maintain a base level of sort of a safety stock of capital.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, just to provide some context. So the ethical investment policy was rewritten this year to kind of increase the scope of our investments. And I think 2015, the policy was passed to divest from the top 200 fossil fuel companies. But this year, we've expanded that scope to increase our reporting mechanism. So we're reporting on both like negative screenings and positive screenings, but adhering to like the UN PRI, which is like the United Nations policy on ethical investment. But yeah, and just going back to like student groups on campus, like Divest did some really great work a couple years ago where they evaluated the university's current investment portfolio and talked about how they're losing money when investing in ethical businesses and where they can increase those revenues. And I think we can take that opportunity to like work with organizations doing this work. And I know the university's like really under fire right now for a lot of their unethical investments. And I think we could like work with the students to bring her back up.
Thank you.
Tired.
And Liam, same question.
I will say that ethical investment is a good idea. And when it comes to long-term ideas and long-term goals, however you define that, we want ideas that are innovative and that are creative. And that's a lot of the time ethical investment can foster that. I'm not saying that it will purely, everything that ethical is always innovative, but I'm saying that there is a root, especially in, let's say, clean energy, in companies that are creating methods to make hydrocarbon energy more efficient and less carbon pollutant. These are ideas that are really important and also very important to our generation. You know, we don't want to have a world where we can't breathe our own air. When I was in China, I experienced that, and I don't want to invest in coal since living in a city that I couldn't breathe in. I experienced the effects of global warming while in China. I experienced that. And so I see the ethical reasoning behind it, and I understand the investment. If you were in oil since 2014, your returns aren't great. And I want to make sure, I know it's, okay, I could talk about that for a while. Anyways, sorry, ethical investment's great. Cool. Sorry, that was really poor.
Thank you. All right, candidates, there'll be 5-minute discussion. You don't have to use the full 5 minutes. Candidates get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking, and then I'll cut you off. 2 candidates attempt to speak at once. One will go, then the other will immediately follow. Please be respectful on stage. Candidates, you may begin.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that since the primary mandate of the investment fund is to maintain the financial future of the student union, and absolutely ethical investment should be a consideration, important consideration when investing in the fund. I'd also say though, I'm not necessarily completely up to date on what the exact criteria is for an ethical investment, but I don't think we should necessarily shun all energy companies if they are showing some real initiative in the green energy field, as well as some more sustainable developments to move away eventually from fossil fuels.
I will say I do agree when it comes to companies like Suncor. They are trying to progress actually away their portfolio away from fossil fuels. They're trying to find investments in how to actually even deal with moving away and how to handle. Sorry, I'm really tired. This is not coherent. But they really are trying to invest a lot of their cash and a lot of their funds and a lot of their resources into moving away and into companies that are not fossil fuel. So I will say we should also look at the projection of a company, not just currently where a company is, where they plan to be, and if their actions are leading towards that. Because companies are always changing. Look at BlackBerry. It's a great company, I think now. Anyways.
Yeah, I'm just going to speak quickly to this. So, like, our current investment portfolio, as of now, only really accounts for like $15,000, and that's not a huge amount of money in terms of like the entirety of the budget. And if we're looking at just like increasing like fiscal responsibility across the board, I think we do a much better job in just like improving the current operations of the union, like improving, like Grey Road runs about anywhere between an $11,000 to a $15,000 deficit every year. The DSU market, although like heavily subsidizes the cost of like food for students, there like that is an area that we can improve on and increase their operations. And investments is important and it's in our mandate, but I think if we're just looking at general fiscal responsibility, we're not going to go broke with $15,000. We're running around a $40,000 surplus right now. So we could work on just expanding and improving our current operations.
I do agree that if knowing now that it's only 15,000, I think we should improve the value of it, get more money into it, especially, let's say, if we want to make really big changes in the future, we need to have money and capital for the big changes that students keep coming to the DSU for. I mean, an investment portfolio is a great way to assure that in 3 to 4 years we'll actually have the funds to reach something. If you invested in an S&P 500 ETF in the past 2 years, you would have had wonderful returns. I could have easily seen wonderful capital gains for the DSU. So it's little things like that where you look at where do we want the DSU to be, and I think if currently knowing that it's only $15,000, I think we could put a lot more effort into looking what we can do with it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment as well. I think for those who are financially inclined or aware that we just came out of probably one of the longest bull markets in history, and that is a bit of a lost opportunity, as Liam said, that knowing that it is that small. However, I think we wouldn't invest all in equities, as we say, so that wouldn't be quite that large a return. But I think definitely knowing that is the size of the investment fund, I think we could definitely stand to be a little more to inject a little more capital into it.
All right, if we're done with the discussion, we'll move on to the next question. And Chantal, you will go first for this one. So this one will also have discussion afterwards. How will you consult students on the next year's budget?
Can I ask clarification? Like the one that's currently being written, or the one for the next year, like the 2019-2020 budget?
From what I understand, the question is how will you consult students on the next year's budget?
If re-elected. Okay, yeah. Cool. So this year's been pretty cool. We've had like a huge changeover in staff, and what that has brought a little, again, we've tossed out a lot of our old shitty practices and brought in a lot of really cool ideas from staff that have worked at student unions across the country. And we were able to, we have a current participatory budgeting report, and we've been able to increase the mandate of that and provide a framework to reach out to our current offices and services. And again, bringing that to council and equipping council with the resources to expand that to their constituents, I think is key. Also, having the opportunity to meet with societies January 1st. The budget's written in April, and that's a long time to meet with societies and get their input on the budget. But I think we have to be a little proactive with that. And September 1st, when students start coming in and they start using our services, giving a feedback loop for them to report on the efficiency and effectiveness of our services, and collecting that data and incorporating it into the budget for the following years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Liam, same question.
Wait, can you repeat it?
Of course.
Sorry, my memory is gone.
How will you consult students on the next year's budget?
Okay. Yeah, I think a good way is to actually go down and talk to students in person. Because I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of students probably get a lot of junk mail. Their email goes to their junk mail, or they just ignore it. They don't see it as important or deem it as important. At least from my experience, my friends' experience, from people who have just talked to on campus, it doesn't seem like, if they see something about the DSU, it doesn't spark a light bulb, oh, I should read that. But if you go talk to them in person and you try and socialize with them and you say that you're an executive of the DSU and that you make the budget, they may be more inclined to just actually give their idea, because you're saying, I'm here and I want to listen. And being in person is something that is somewhat of a rarity nowadays. It seems technology has taken over a stronghold on how we converse and how we talk to people. I think we just need to have a healthier mix between consulting students in person, like Chantal was saying, in the operations of the DSU, and also online.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, kind of staying with the theme of empowering the student societies, I think we should also kind of use, if possible, use the student societies sort of as a proxy to kind of gauging what the spending is going to be in the next year. I think students that aren't necessarily, although we want to strive to get them more involved in the student union, I think are in general much more actively involved at either their faculty society or a levy society and I forget the name for the lower one, but there are other societies, and I think consulting more and asking, also implementing maybe some policies in the society policy that would require faculty societies to maybe meet with their constituents more often and use their voices to see what the spending is projected to be within those societies, and then I'll collect that into an aggregated spending projection.
Thank you. So candidates, you have 5 minutes to discuss the question. You don't have to use all 5 minutes, 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking, and then I'll cut you off. If 2 candidates attempt to speak at the same time, one will proceed and the other will immediately follow. Please be respectful on stage. Anyone may begin.
It's time to move on to the next question.
All right, so if nobody wants to discuss this question, we'll move on to the next question. This next question, Liam will go first. I just want to say before I announce the question that this one does have some subject matter that may be a little uncomfortable to some students. So Liam, what are your views on the current operations of the DSU Survivor Support?
I won't lie. I don't have much knowledge on that. I'm sorry, and maybe I should look more into it. I will after this, but sadly, my answer is I don't really know or have an opinion, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, same question.
I know that I would say I'm not as knowledgeable as I probably should be on the matter, but I do know that it's important, especially nowadays and in the increasingly divisive time that people have, or views that people have on this issue. We need to remain survivor focused on these issues and really maintaining that focus on them while maintaining any due process concerns that we may have. However, the onus is always the focus should always be on the victim and making sure that they are supported in their time of need.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Could I have it repeated, please, and thank you?
Of course.
Thank you.
What are your views on the current operations of the DSU Survivor Support?
Okay, cool. So the Survivor Support Center is its first year in full operations this year, and I think in its first year, it's done really incredible work. We've trained upwards of 70 students on survivor-centric on survivor support training and phone line training. But I think there's a lot of room to expand the operations, and I have this vision that survivor support training will be just as cool and fun as DMCRT training. There's gonna be folks at every bar event. There's gonna be folks at society programming that are ready to listen and intervene and have the training to do that. I want to have survivor support training mandated to societies when they do their risk management training, so it's not just an afterthought. So yeah, and unfortunately, we've been putting a lot of the work on survivors of sexualized violence. When again, we all have a role to play, and we can't keep doing that.
Thank you. All right, candidates, you will again have 5 minutes for discussion. Candidates get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If two candidates attempt to speak at the same time, one will go, the other will immediately proceed. Candidates, please be respectful on stage. You do not have to use all 5 minutes. Anyone may begin.
I just want to quickly address the intersectionality of this work. So 1 in 5 women in their time on university campuses, 1 in 4? Okay, yeah, even more. Women in their time on university campuses will experience a form of sexualized violence, and those numbers are even higher for folks who belong to marginalized communities. And we have the opportunity to continue to support this, and it's unfortunate that the university just didn't put their money where their mouth was, even after they commissioned a very expensive report on like sexualized violence on this campus after what happened with Dal Dentistry. And I think we have to continue to advocate to like increase funding to that services through the university, but as well like keep it autonomous so students feel comfortable seeking peer support, because I know the current university system can be extremely traumatizing and harmful to survivors.
Thank you. So I have a question to the chair. Oh,
Yep.
no, you're not the chairman. You are the moderator. I guess, can somebody help define the operations? Just because I don't really know much about it. I'm just curious if in 45 seconds somebody could just briefly describe the operations or how it runs, and just give a brief lay down.
I can speak quickly if I'm given permission. So the current mandate of the center provides both an educational piece. They provide like a service between 12 p.m. and 12 a.m. Access to a phone line where you can disclose completely anonymously to volunteers, and just like it is a center for those materials to be distributed and produced. And it's a preventative measure as well as a resource for survivors to come to if seeking resources.
Okay.
So what is the, just also curious, what is the relationship in terms of the educational outreach between survivor support training and either members of council or executives?
Yeah, so as of now, there is no formal relationship. Like I've just had the opportunity to work very closely with the survivor support manager this year because I chose to build that relationship, and I chose to like help them write their budget and work closely with them, and they've had the opportunity to present those things to council, but there is no official, actually their official mandate was just passed at council last week, and you can check that out on the DSU webpage, but they do have like a mission and vision and a long-term plan. I'm not sure, it might be 5 or 10 years, but I urge you folks to look that up. Did I answer the question? I can't remember at this point.
Yes.
Okay, okay, cool. Sorry. Yep.
All right, so if there's no more discussion, we'll move on to the next question. This will be the last question before our second break. And this one will be for Ryan to answer first. This one will also have discussion afterwards. How will you work with the administration to improve food services at Sexton and in the sub?
Well, I think for the sub, for the most part, the main issue, what I would identify is the wait times have been for food services are increasingly long. The loaded ladle line was I pretty much out the door yesterday, and I think we need to either increase the number of cashiers that are operating in the sub, or increase the number of food service providers that operate in that space. As for Sexton campus, we need to get them some microwaves. So that's what we need to do.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, so there's two kind of food operations that are going on in the sub. We have our contracts, our 10-year contract with Chartwells, which is like a third-party organization that runs like Booster Juice, Tim Hortons, Meza, Bento, all those fun ones. And then we have our student operated food services such as like the DSU Market and the Loaded Ladle. As for Chartwells, we do have a current food panel with them that we meet every so often, and we can address current issues, and we have the opportunity to survey students and see where we can improve. As for like lines, I know they just invested money into putting in another line for Tim's, but I think it also lies with just like improving food services in the sub lies in just like providing more resources to the student-run operations. Like Loaded Ladle and the Market. I know as of now, the administration provides $5,000 a year to the Market, but like we really need to expand that. And as for food services on Sexton, I would have the opportunity to meet with Airmark this year, and unfortunately we can't do a whole lot there. However, expand student-run food service on campus. Food-run student services on Sexton campus, like the Market and the Ladle, by providing more resources. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
Yeah, I would look. So the question included the administration, like working with the administration, correct?
Hold on. The question was, how will you work with the administration to improve food services at Sexton and in the sub?
Yeah. Okay, so it goes back to the idea of having a long-term financial plan. So these are really big changes that you can't really change in 12 months, like a real change. You can't just put in a full Tim's within 12 months. You've got to save. You have to find the capital. You have to talk to administration or the people who own the building. It's not a quick fix. So talking to the administration, having open dialogue, trying to collaborate on how we can make a plan together that won't just happen in a year, but will take 3 to 4 years easily. So communicating with them. But then also things that have no relationship with the administration is having student-led initiatives in the DSU or on Sexton, where they can, say, I said earlier, have like a homemade bakery where they sell their own goods, little things like that, where we could also give them grants and give them money or talk to the administration to get money from them for these student-led initiatives so they can offer food at a subsidized rate to students, but allow them also to have an entrepreneurial what's that word? Outlet on campus.
Thank you. So again, candidates, you'll have 5 minutes to discuss, 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking time. If 2 candidates try to speak, one will go, the other will go immediately afterwards. Please be respectful on the stage. You don't have to use all 5 minutes. You may begin.
Yeah, I think a potential solution as well to the some of the congestion that we find in the sub is we need to spread out where the food services are located. I think there's a extremely high concentration in the sub, although it is probably, and that is one of the reasons it's the most trafficked building. But we need to spread out. We could probably where they can find space throughout the rest of the campus, and we can kind of funnel some of the students and those customers towards other locations that are less congested, will have less traffic problems, and lower wait times and greater student satisfaction.
Just to speak quickly to that, so we're run by Chartwells, and the university uses Aramark. And I've met with Chartwells and I've met with Aramark, and unfortunately, there's very little autonomy there, and we don't have choices as to where things are put, because if it's cheaper for them to keep it in one place, they're not moving, and if it's too expensive for them to implement a kitchen at Sexton, they're not going to do it. So our only real resource is to fund student-run operations, and even though we are limited there, get the university to put their money where their mouth is and stop raising tuition. But you know what I mean? It's just what are y'all doing? What are y'all saying? But yeah, just funding the student-run operations, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of autonomy when it comes to Chartwells and Aramark, and they're huge multi-billion-dollar companies that aren't going to listen to us. And I've tried, and there's no negotiating there. Thank you. Their one priority is profit, not student interest, and that's why.
That's 45 seconds.
Thank you.
All right. So yeah, that's true that student-led initiatives is really important. Another idea that I came across when I was in Sexton yesterday was yesterday when I was talking to a student was having companies like Just Us Cafe or other little small cafes put together a portable and movable little cafe where they sell food that they make and little coffee things around Sexton campus at least. Because right now it's hard for students to have just one little Tim Hortons for 2,100 students. So if we can have, let's say on Mondays you have Just Us Cafe, just communicating with local companies to see if they can actually even do something on campus instead. I don't know if that would be manageable or feasible, but it's something that I definitely would be interested in looking at.
With current operations and in abiding to their contracts, and as of now we're bound by a 10-year contract with Chartwells, and I don't even know what the Aramark is one with. I think the Aramark one is 8 or 9 years with the university left. You cannot operate they have full autonomy and power over the food that's operated in those spaces. And even in our building, we're not allowed to cater events with more than 25 people if it doesn't go through Chartwells or Aramark. So we are extremely limited in that capacity. And again, just let the students just give it to the students.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say, I think that's a great idea. And I guess it'll help, because I know a lot of people have been saying that they want the DSU to have more entrepreneurial abilities and to give students who have business ideas an opportunity. So I guess it would be a great little avenue for people to be able to utilize maybe some funds from the DSU or from the housing administration to not only feed the housing students, but to also help students at Dow grow as individuals. So
yeah, what could also be a potential solution for Sexton, given that they are kind of located in closer to downtown, could potentially look. I'm not sure what the exact bylaw specifications on this would be, but look into potentially maybe a voucher program to allow them to access some of the other outside the school food services that are provided in the area, just for a matter of convenience, and that could be one solution.
Dues has done that, and they have, I think, a 10 to 15% discount at local businesses, and they have been granted everyone's granted access to use the Girard Hall meal hall, but again, it's just so limited, unfortunately, because like we're bound by these money grabbing corporations. Capitalism, the fall of it. I wait. Just kidding. Sorry. VPFO.
All right. Well, if we're done with that discussion, we are going to take our second break. Again, I want to remind people in the audience and online that if they have any questions, they can submit them to Ian. He's at the back of the room. His hand is up and waving. If you have any concerns about the debate, you can either see Caitlin at the back of the room, or you can email the CRL. We will return after a short break. Thank you.
Probably shouldn't have plugged the capitalism thing.
We have human rights, and they're being broken right now.
Yeah, we can't be imprisoned here.
All right, welcome back. So we now have our fourth candidate here, Elise Gabin, I believe it is.
Yep. Gavin.
So, Elise, I'll give you a 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll move right on to questions.
Sure. Thank you. Okay. So hi, my name's Elise. I'm so sorry that I was absent for the first portion of this. But a little bit about myself. I'm in my third year of a biology major, so I'm the science one here. But I've always really loved numbers and problem solving, and I was always that nerd who loved math class. So yeah, I just kind of taken my love for that and put it into other finance and operation stuff that was mentioned earlier in my responses that I wrote in. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here.
All right, thank you. So we'll move right on into questions. And Elise, since you just arrived, I'd like to give you the opportunity to answer this question first.
Oh, thank you.
And this one will have a discussion. So Elise, how will you work with levied societies to help them operate effectively and be accountable to students?
So to work with levied societies, I'd really like to listen to them and communicate with them on their needs and what they need to improve and succeed in the future. So yeah, just listening, consultation, and then working with them to find solutions or ways to improve and expand what they're doing in their specific societies, or levied societies, yeah.
All right, thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I think as we hear from levy societies that, for example, CKU, that when the levy wasn't increased in 30 years or whatever, there's clearly been a lack of dialogue on the part between us and them, for example. So I would equate that in general, a lack of dialogue between us and levy societies. So I think further consultation ongoing and updating yearly what their projected increases are in their costs. I think they provide a very valuable service to the student body, and we need to really promote that their operations are healthy and well financed.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Cool. There's a couple ways you can do that. I think one is just centralizing communication. I know it sounds real broad, but let's just talk about elections this year and how levied societies were given unclear or several different communications about how to run a referendum and how to increase their funding. So September 1st, giving them that information and also equipping them with the resources to ensure that they can follow equity policies in the DSU, such as our equity hiring policy, and ensuring that they can hire students at a living wage so students can do the work within their levied societies and continue to do programming and educate and following their mandate, but just providing them with the resources to do so. And such as the information and financial resources and space. Space is huge, and a lot of the market, for example, doesn't have permanent space, and we're just the food bank, and just giving institutionalizing your space for more cool grad program.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
Yeah, from what I've heard from societies that I've talked to in the past week and a bit, a lot of them have issues with the auditing process and understanding just their basic accounting issues and making sure that, when auditing season comes around, that they're not running around like a chicken with their head cut off. And it's hard when you want to do so much for the people and for the people that are part of your society, but you have a nagging worry about if your audit's going to go well. Even though from what Chantal said, they did, they all got approved and did well this year. I just want to make sure that the process with which they go through their auditing, that they're prepared for it, and that they understand that what they're doing, how to do it, and also to simplify their financial streams and make sure that they understand how to account for it throughout the year better. Because from what I've heard, it's hard for them when they have so much money come from different angles and different areas for them to really organize it for the auditing season.
Thank you. All right, candidates, there'll be a 5-minute discussion. Each candidate gets 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking before I'll cut you off. I have 2 candidates attempt to talk at the same time. One will go, the other will immediately follow. You don't have to use all 5 minutes. Candidates, please be respectful while you're on talking, and you may begin.
Well,
Oh,
Yeah.
Right. So we'll move on to the next question then. And Ryan, this one will be asked to you first. What are your current thoughts on the society member grant application process? In addition, what are some changes or ways you ensure the process is more accessible?
Yeah, for sure. So currently, the grant process, I'd say it's okay, but I think we can do better. I think some of the requirements are a little superfluous and not necessarily and do limit the legitimate student societies who really need these grants in order to function. I think it can be streamlined slightly. I did mention before that although, yes, because, and as Chantal mentioned, that although we are providing a service as a student union, and I don't really think that it should be necessary for students to prove that or to plug the DSU at whatever event they're attending. So I think that some of those terms and conditions for in order to get grants should be eliminated.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Yeah, so the process now isn't too stringent. It requires just like a basic member grant, a cover letter, submission of receipts, and just like your general society budget. But again, like there are barriers with that, and I think we can do a better job in just like providing a template on our website so students can see what's needed. And also, this year I did teach folks how to apply for member grants in my treasurer training, which usually isn't done. And again, just reallocating like the grant allocations, like certain amount for levy societies, a certain amount for general interest and constituent and equity seeking societies. So it's not, the students aren't limited by time because time is our most valuable resource.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
Sorry, can you actually repeat the question?
Of course. What are your current thoughts on the society member grant application process? In addition, what are some changes or ways you'd ensure the process is more accessible?
Yeah, I sadly don't actually have a plethora of knowledge on the actual process itself, like my two other candidates, sadly. So I can't really say much. So I'm not going to waste time from tonight to ramble about things I don't really have a solid understanding of. So sorry about that.
All right, thank you. And Elise, same question.
So a bit like Liam, I don't have as much information on it, but I think there's always ways that we can like improve the way like societies are like applying for them and like give them more information about it. So we can go and like talk to these groups and help them through the process and make sure it's as easy as possible for them to access the grants.
All right, thank you. Before I ask about the 5-minute discussion, do candidates want to have a 5-minute discussion on this question?
I actually would.
Okay, so there will be a 5-minute discussion on this question. Candidates get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If two candidates attempt to talk at the same time, one will immediately speak and the other will proceed. Please be respectful. You don't have to use all 5 minutes. You may begin.
Yeah, so I know that I believe the question was specifically directed towards membership grants. But if we applied it more generally to societies as well, although the process itself in terms of forms is, as I noted, could use some updating. I think also the communication process that is required between I believe the grants, the grant review committee, and whatever the society is or member that is applying for grants. I think that there should be a real emphasis on improving the efficiency of that process. I think some of the wait times have really dragged on for some students and societies I've spoken to, and I think that could be improved on.
Yeah, I think wait times are always an issue, and not something that can be improved on again with just like hiring more students and getting more students in the union. But again, I think follow-up is important, and I talked about this earlier, but just following up that after students have received their grants and asking them like, is this meeting your society or your individual need in the sense of like a member grant, and how we can improve on that. Yeah.
All right, if there is no one else who wants to discuss, we'll move on to the next question. And Chantal, you will answer this one first. So Chantal, currently, Chartwells has a contract with DSU that is for over 10 years. Chartwell is a multinational company that do not have the students and its workers' best interest in mind. Will you challenge Chartwells during your position? Will you work to implement infrastructure for culturally appropriate, locally sourced, affordable food on Studley, Carleton, and Sexton campuses?
Just a little bit, just a clarification, Chartwells only operates in the sub. Aramark is the one that operates on the other campuses. However, we do have a couple of opportunities to kind of like pick and poke at Chartwells. We do have the opportunity to consult, and we have the opportunity to construct these food panels where groups of students can reach out and survey students on whether Chartwells is meeting their needs. And we do have the opportunity to use that to get Chartwells to change their suppliers, to get them to access more sustainable local suppliers. And this year, Chartwells started using halal chicken, but we can use halal meat across the board. It's available local here, and it can be used on the scale that they use. I know this year Chartwells had the opportunity to work with the market to supply fruits and veggies for booster juice, but we could really expand that with Meza, again with Bento. Yeah, just really across the board. And it's really unfortunate that we're limited to a 10-year contract, but we still do have the opportunity to pick and poke and hold them accountable through the food panel and just informing students on their processes and getting students to give students the opportunity to pick.
And that's a minute. Liam, same question.
Yeah, I think it's important to advocate and to talk to students about what their needs are, listen to them, and then go advocate to Chartwell, especially if they're here for, I think we just got re-signed, last year, correct? So we've got basically 9 more years left with them, so it's a long time. So we have to really talk to them about what the students need, and then how can we make it applicable? How can we help to make the process to transferring to finding better sourced foods that are necessary for students of specific dietary restrictions. We have to make sure that we find a way to work together, but also at the same time making sure that we advocate for students, making sure that they know what students need, and continually really nagging them and telling them that if you want to get your contract renewed after this, students will need more than what they're given right now. We have to give them an ultimatum. We have to make sure that students really fight and say what they need and are vocal about it.
Thank you. Elise, same question.
Would you mind repeating the question?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Currently, Chartwells has a contract with the DSU that is for over 10 years. Chartwells is a multinational company that do not have the students and its workers' best interests in mind. Will you challenge Chartwells during your position? Will you work to implement infrastructure for culturally appropriate, locally sourced, affordable food on Studley, Carleton, and Sexton campuses?
So just to echo what some of the other candidates have said, I think we can really go to Chartwells and hold them accountable to students and make sure that everything that they're doing is directly benefiting students. So with that, going to students, talking to them, see what improvements we can make within the sub specifically, because I believe the other organization does the other campuses. Just holding Chartwells accountable to what students need from them and what they need from their food and that on campus.
All right, thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, so just from a kind of a leverage perspective, it may seem that Chartwells there's a bit of a power imbalance in terms of our bargaining power and that of what is a large corporation. But I think they, at the end of the day, want to ensure that we remain a long-term partner of theirs. So what that leads to is, I think we can definitely go to them and try to pitch what services through the consultation with students would be beneficial to the student experience, and we can see how we can maybe renegotiate or modify the contracts or the term of the contracts if that is possible in the current agreement.
Thank you. Do candidates want to have a 5-minute discussion on this question? All right. Candidates, you'll have a 5-minute discussion on this question. You do not have to use all 5 minutes. You get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If 2 candidates attempt to talk at the same time, one will go, the other will immediately proceed. Please be respectful to other candidates talking. You may begin.
Can we start? Yeah, just a couple of things we did, we have signed with Chartwells for 10 years, and unfortunately there's a whole lot of wiggle room there, but we can learn from our mistakes, and we can institutionalize create policies and bylaws and issue policies about how long we can sign contracts, and what organizations can be held to. So I'm sure Chartwell's has obviously not been the first, and they may not be the last, but we can have it in our policy, so they have to adhere to it, and they come in knowing what they have to be bound to for the future. And I think it's also important that we do so in such a way that we're ensuring that their staff are being trained in their staff are being paid equitably, and they have the opportunity to receive proper anti-oppressive training and can yeah.
Yeah, while I would agree that yes, we should rework what the policies are regarding the contract signing with corporations into the future, I don't think students would be satisfied with just sitting around for 9 years knowing that they're not getting the best deal that they could possibly get. So I think that's no reason to limit our efforts to re-engage with Chartwells and see if we can expand our options with them based on what recommendation and feedback we get from the students.
I think, oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I think, yeah, one thing that we could do is also look at alternatives, look at plan and make an idea of, in 9 years, what other companies are out there that we could utilize, what are other routes that we can go down, avenues that we can go down, so that we know and ahead that there are other players in the field that might be actually willing to cooperate with us more and to be more abiding to students' needs and issues. It's good to advocate, but we also have to make sure that if they don't give us the time and the money or the effort, really, in general, we have to have an alternative of maybe someone or another company that would be able to actually give us what we need.
That's kind of why I suggested we expand the scope of the food panel. And we also have hired staff in the building. We have the food commissioner that works with the CISO. And their mandate is to research food security, food sovereignty on this campus. But we also have administration. We have folks with the administration that do that as well. And I think it's important we work with them and expand our consulting framework. Expand our consulting practices with Chartwells and ensure we are meeting students' needs.
All right, so if there's no more discussion, we'll move on to the next question. And Liam, you'll go first for this one. What risks or changes are you willing to take or initiate next year that will be beneficial to Dalhousie and its community?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, I think, I said it before, I'll say it again, long-term financial planning is risky in the sense that what if I'm putting all this time and effort into something that I believe is beneficial to students, is beneficial to real big change on campus, but I leave and the person says, you know what, I don't care about student input in this plan, I don't care about student data that's been included in it, I want to scrap it. That puts a lot of onus on the fact that I did something, I put a lot of effort, I gave student hope, and it just didn't work. And I think that there's a big risk in that. There's a big risk in the fact that I have a responsibility, not just for myself, but the future VPFOs. But I'm willing to take that on because I think long-term planning is extremely beneficial. You have prime ministers and you have governments that are in for 4 years, and they can barely do anything. So at Dal, I think we need more than just a year to see real change on campus.
Thank you. Elise, same question.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Of course.
I think I have it.
What risks or changes are you willing to take or initiate next year that will be beneficial to Dalhousie and its community?
Yeah. So risks and changes that I like to make is just making sure that everything is student focused. Not to say that it already isn't, but I really want to put it a focus on being student centered, and then making everything accessible to students. So that could come with a lot of change, and that would definitely be a bit more work to put in, but I'm definitely willing to make that risk in order to benefit students in the long term.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, so building off what we were discussing earlier with the investment fund, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's currently policy to how to distribute any budget surplus that we have. I'm not exactly sure what the exact breakdown is, but I would definitely try to increase the contribution that there would be to that investment fund in order to safeguard the long-term financial stability of the union in times of uncertainty, and as well going with some policy amendments with regards to the grant process, that in of itself could potentially be risky in that it opens up the opportunity for societies that don't use the funds in a proactive or productive way. But I think that the benefits would outweigh the risk in that regard if we limited some of those requirements for grants.
Thank you. And Chantal, same question.
Cool. I think what a big risk that we kind of started this year, and I think we can continue to initiate, is just like holding the university accountable and getting them to put their money where their mouth is. Like putting out strategic priority 5.2. How are you going to action that? Putting over $600,000 to cover up the Dow dentistry scandal. Imagine putting that money in like survivor-centric work, or like combating racism on campus, or like carving out space for folks who experience sexualized violence and racism on campus, and just really like holding them to their own policies and procedures. And it can be really hard sitting at a table with folks who have been there for a very long time, and you're just another executive that will turn over year after year. But just having that framework, having it in council, and putting it in our policies. Are we checking up on the administration? We have the opportunity to meet with them on a bi-weekly basis, and the president even on a monthly basis. And we really aren't using that opportunity to really pick and poke, and we could.
Thank you. Do candidates want to have a discussion on this question?
I'd like to say
all right. So candidates, you get 5 minutes to discuss this question. You don't have to use all 5 minutes. You get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking, then you'll be cut off. If two candidates attempt to speak at the same time, one will go, the other will immediately proceed. Please be respectful to each other on stage. Anyone may begin.
Just from the perspective of, I think we mentioned earlier that the DSU has a bit of a reputation as an insiders club. People tend to be in positions for a long time, and I think that there's an extreme benefit in having new perspectives and new people with various experiences that come into positions of power. I think that's very important. So with respect to, it is a riskiness and that there is an established track record for some executives, but I think that is very important that we increase the student participation and the diversity of experience and views that reside and make the decisions within the union.
All right, if there is no other discussion, we'll move on to the next question. I believe it's Elise that goes first this time. So Elise, how you ensure the eligibility of society grants or funding to all societies with different beliefs?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Of course. How will you ensure the eligibility of society grants or funding to all societies with different beliefs?
Okay. I think that it's really about talking to them and just making sure that they all have equal opportunity to get those grants. It's not really I wouldn't say it's my opinion to say whether or not they can have those, and I think that creating an equal opportunity for everyone to be able to get those grants is really important to ensure that it's fair for everyone when they come in for those.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think this is a very relevant question, given that there is a lot of debate about potential censorship going around universities these days. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, one of the terms in the clauses for receiving grants is that the goal or the society itself that's applying cannot contradict the values or goals of the student union. So I think we need to be very specific when evaluating societies for grants in what their goal is and what their objectives are and what their practices are, and making sure that they are indeed following what the priorities and the policies of the student union are, and to be very careful and not very obviously try to be as least restrictive as possible, because we want to increase the student participation, but we want to make sure that we follow the guidelines.
Thank you.
I think one of the ways you could do that is taking into account the grant allocation I suggested earlier, ensuring certain groups who adhere to certain demographics are guaranteed a certain amount of money, and that is proportional to the communities that they're reaching out to. And we have 365 ratified societies as of last week, so we have plenty of diverse opinions on this campus. Give me a second, sorry. And as long as the society is adhering to our general bylaws and policies around equity and discrimination, and you are submitting your cover letter and your receipts, we're not gonna not grant you money. We have conservative societies, we have liberal societies, we have Ennisburg, and we're not allowing them to receive money as long as they're just don't discriminate. Like, it's in our policies. Like, if you're following our policies and procedures, you are granted money, and if you're following our granted policy practices, and we can always change that, and that can be brought to council, and that's an opportunity for us.
That's
to
1 minute.
look at.
Thank you. And Liam, same question.
I think it's important to have opposing opinions on campus, and we should foster these abilities, access to grants, as long as the society is respectful and is not discriminatory, as everyone is saying. There should be no problem in accessing grants and money to operate. We're a university, and we're here to challenge each other and to bring different ideas together in a peaceful environment. So as long as we stay peaceful and respectful and follow guidelines, there should be no problem.
Thank you. Do candidates want to have a 5-minute discussion? All right. Candidates, you have 5 minutes to discuss the question. You do not have to use the full amount of time. Candidates get 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If 2 candidates attempt to speak at the same time, one will go, the other will immediately proceed. Please be respectful. Anyone may begin.
Our current society, in order to apply for society grants, you have to be a fully ratified society, and that makes you feel like write your constitution and ensure that your constitution is adherent to our current bylaws and policies, and that you are following just general procedures. And I don't think there's a whole lot of room for discrimination other than that. And this committee isn't just me, it's a committee of 5 other students that come from all different walks of life on council. And it's an opportunity for us all to keep each other accountable. But also, it brings that diversity of opinion and thought into the grant committee meeting as well. Thank you.
So just jumping off that. So if indeed that it's most of the requirements for being granted funding are indeed the same as the ones that you need to get ratified, I think we should ensure that the society policies as well are very carefully looked at and adhered to, and don't move very far beyond what the regulation says in the policy, as well as I think that any society, I believe there is an appeals process for if you are denied, but I would just hope that I've never myself run for or made an effort to create a society, but I would hope that if a society executive the founder is refused ratification, that they would be able to present their case in person to the committee if that's not already the case.
All right, if we're all done with discussing, then you sure?
You are given the opportunity to bring the appeal to the committee, but that's it.
That's okay.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next question. We only have 2 questions left, just to let you know. This next one will have no discussion unless you absolutely really want to, but given the nature of the question, I don't think you will. So we'll start with Ryan, I believe, and it's who's your biggest inspiration?
Oh boy. I'd say not that I followed his or not that I read any of his work, but someone that I like to kind of uphold myself to or follow in his footsteps would be Galileo, because he endured a great oppression for the views that he held, and even though that he knew he was right. And I think that is standing up for something you believe in, and when you know it's the truth, even though you may face a constant oppression for it, is quite commendable, and that's one of my inspiring figures.
Thank you. Chantal, same question.
Although in a lot of my recent posts, I said Anita, and she still is my inspiration. My mom, and she actually walked in a little late, but my mom raised 5 kids. while working full time and put 3 meals on the table a day and like holds me accountable every day and tells me I can do better. And I love you, Mom. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
Yeah, that sounds like a copycat. My mom. She passed away when I was an infant, and I didn't get to know her. And for me, my life has been to follow in her footsteps of kindness. She was a recreational therapist, and she helped people with physical and mental disabilities enjoy life to their fullest. And I remember when I was older, I read a book, literally a book of what people had said about her, and it's giving me a lot of words that I want my journey in life to be. She was taken from us too early, and I think it's my due diligence as her son to shine her light on people. So hopefully, if you know me, you feel that. But for me, yeah, my mom for sure.
Thank you.
I want to cry. I don't do that. No. And then I'm gonna cry, and then it's gonna be ugly.
Elise, same question.
Yeah, so I'm going to copy them as well. I would say my mom as well. My parents, if you know me, my parents were divorced when I was younger, so it was just my mom raising my sister and I by herself. She worked a full-time job as well, and she was able to put 2 kids by herself through university, paid for. She's so successful. She's had like amazing jobs, and she's always told my sister and I, you can do whatever you want as long as you put your mind to it, and as long as you're doing something. And I really appreciate that statement. She always tells me, again, like you can do whatever you want as long as you put your mind to it, and that is like what I carry with myself all the time. Especially when I'm in a different province. I'm from Ontario, and so I don't get to see her a lot. I see her like twice a year, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. And so always her words and her support are what keep me going.
Thank you. Do candidates want to have a discussion on this? All right, we'll move on to our final question. Mom, if you see this, I love you too. So this is our final question. This one we'll have discussion, and then we'll move on to closing statements. So this will be Chantal. Given the population of persons with disability at DAL and the issues faced by these students, how does this influence your budget thinking?
Yeah, that's a huge topic, and unfortunately, it doesn't come up as often as it should. And our own building does not meet like general accessibility needs, and this university doesn't. And honestly, like it's extremely important that they're addressed. We do have an equity and accessibility office, and we do have the opportunity to provide bursaries for there. And that's something we can do for next year. It is something that we can address in our solidarity line that I'm hoping to craft this year. And we do have the accessibility bursary. And although I don't sit on that committee, like that's an opportunity to look at the policies around applications and ensuring that we're meeting the needs of students with accessibilities, because they're often left out of the conversation, and their needs aren't being met, and we don't treat them very well on this campus. And it's really unfortunate that we haven't prioritized their voice, and I think that's something that needs to change.
Thank you. Liam, same question.
Yeah, I completely agree. The campus we have right now is not very accessible. If you want to go to Henry Hicks, you have to go through the side back door, which is not something that I can imagine feels great. If you want to do a chemistry degree and you have a wheelchair, well, you can't. And those are things that we shouldn't have to say to students. We shouldn't say that if you want to have a science degree going to the LSE, you just sit in the back as if you are an outcast. When it comes to the budget and looking at the budget, I would want to make sure that we can possibly save money, put some money to the side, to make sure that we have plans in place, financial plans, to ensure that students we can at least look into how we can make it easier. Find ways for the budget to be maneuvered and to be just better utilized for these students. It really we don't hear a lot about, sadly. We don't hear their opinions very often when it comes to the budget. So hopefully this coming year that changes.
Thank you. Elise, same question.
Yeah, so kind of to actually echo what Liam said, in my first year in chemistry, I was on crutches, and it is awful to try and get around there. I do agree with the other candidates that our campus isn't as accessible as it could be. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think that working with the accessibility office to keep improving like accessibility that we can allocate to those with disabilities and improve their I guess like experience and how they get around on campus is really important. And I think it would be really awesome to add someone like from that committee or that office to maybe like the budget and finance committee, and that way like they can really have input and into like increasing funds to have a more accessible campus.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Yeah, so there's some very real and apparent shortcomings in our accommodation for people with disabilities, notably the Tiger Patrol, which I reviewed in the budget, which its percentage of a contribution to the expenses was probably not where it needs to be if we're going to be accommodating people with disabilities. Making vans that are, or purchasing vans that are wheelchair accessible would be one initiative, and as well with the grants, disability grants contribution that people with disabilities can apply for. I know that transportation costs, if you're trying to go to an event somewhere outside of the HRM, are high enough on your own. And I'm not sure what the costs entailed are for people with disabilities, but especially if you're a physical disability, but they must be substantial, and making that more accessible is important.
Candidates, would you like to have a discussion on this question? All right, candidates, you'll have 5 minutes to discuss this question. You don't have to use all 5 minutes. 45 seconds of uninterrupted speaking. If 2 candidates attempt to speak at the same time, one will go, the other will immediately proceed. Please be respectful. You may begin.
Cool. Just to speak to like specific actionables that can be done, and this is just like whoever's elected, like this is important. We do have a facilities improvement fund that is underutilized in its capacity to address accessibility issues on this campus. We do also have an accessibility fund that we're actually going to be using to implement an accessible Tiger Patrol next year. It was supposed to be implemented this year, but unfortunately there's been some issues with the process around it, and our insurance for Tiger Patrol this year is a bit of a mess, but there are ways that we can enact that in our building and advocate to the university. They are mandated by the government to have physically accessible buildings, and I don't think we're pushing them enough on getting that done faster, getting them to put the money where their mouth is.
And as well, making further use of consulting people with disabilities in the decision-making process is something that I've been more aware of, that it's not at where it needs to be, and we need to really promote that in all decision-making that takes place that will affect them.
I also think it's really important, like, as an able-bodied individual, to like work with, like, the university has an accessibility center, and they have access to students who identify with accessibility needs, and would probably have a lot to say about their current experience on this campus, and just like respectfully reaching out and implementing like their needs.
All right, if there is no more discussion, we will move on to closing statements. For closing statements, it's the exact same as opening statements. You get 2 minutes to close, and then we will end the debate. I believe, Ryan, you were the last one
I opened, yes.
What's that?
I opened, yeah.
You opened, yeah. So we'll do the same order. So Ryan, you're first for closing statements.
Yeah, sure. So I want to thank everyone again for coming out. Just some key takeaways that you guys can keep with you when you go home. My main platform, I really want to empower student societies, let them be the medium through which the students can have the best experience possible. Here at Dalhousie, we are a great institution. There are a lot of areas where we can improve the operations and the various day-to-day workings of the university. But I really want to make those societies feel like they are supported, whether they're faculty societies or general societies, unlevied societies, and really increase transparency in the access to data and access to information for those who want to be involved in the decision-making process with the student union. So that means providing raw data on the website, a lot of data in some cases. Doesn't always have to be pretty. It's got to be there for those who want to be part of the decision-making process and holding the student union accountable for where we are prioritizing our assets and where we are spending our effort. So then again, I want to empower student societies and make us more accountable, and vote Ryan.
Thank you. Liam, you're next.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. It's been a long 3 hours, so thanks for sticking through it. I know it's me a lot of effort mentally. So yeah, I think it's important to think about, well, we've talked about really important things today that have made me challenge, not a challenge, but maybe rethink or think about things that I might not necessarily think about. So I do want to thank people for submitting questions that, I don't necessarily always think about, and they're not part of my platform initially. So, so thank you. And lastly, I want to talk about, just a little bit reminder of what I'm running for, and sorry, my brain is not present at the moment. I really want to make sure that Dal's DSU budget is long-term planning, that we make sure that we can actually take real change. Oh my God, sorry, this is so embarrassing. To make sure that real change actually happens on campus, and that we listen to students, and that we input their opinions and their feelings towards what's happening on campus into our budget. We talk to societies. We make sure societies feel more comfortable with their auditing process, feel like they understand how to streamline their accounting process, so that when time comes in the year, they aren't swamped, feeling scared or worried about what's going to happen. And lastly, transparency is really important. As Ryan had stated, I want to make sure that our budget is clearly defined and definitions within it are there, so if students want to know more about it, they don't have to email someone. It's in the actual Excel workbook that we have going. They can learn more from it. It's all there in front of them. It's detailed and broken down to ensure that students don't have a barrier in front of them to learning. Because financial literacy is not necessarily, and sadly not, a well-known part of many people's lives. So to combat that, I want to make sure that we have a strong, transparent budget circulating throughout campus.
Thank you. Chantal.
Cool. I'm here to finish what I got started. Like, I care. This job is really, really taxing, and if my heart wasn't in it, I wouldn't be here again, and I wouldn't. I really wouldn't, because it's a lot, and I really love this work, and I really love student politics, and I think it's beautiful at its core that we're literally work to nothing, and we still come back asking for more and looking at how we can improve and just do better as a whole. This year, I really tried to prioritize like food justice and just like access to education, and I really want to continue to do that work next year. And I also just want to increase student engagement in student jobs and just really increase like the social ownership of the union. I want folks to feel like their union is theirs and they can just like come and hang out, and it's not an insiders club, and anyone can get involved at any stage of their degree and from whatever walk of life. The time and resources is there, and I don't have to relearn the channels of communication. I'm ready to hit the ground running and do it for round two. Two-peat. Goat season.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Elise.
Yeah, so again, I just want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you to everyone who submit questions. It's awesome. So a little bit about my platform is, again, just being like accountable to students and make sure that we're always working with students in mind, and the unity of students across all of our campuses is really, really important to me, making sure that all those voices are heard and that they all benefit from the DSU. And as well as the other candidates mentioned, making the financial portion online more transparent and easier for everyone to access, so they can understand where their money is being allocated. They have a right to know how their money is being spent and how it directly benefits them. And so, I just want to apologize for missing the first portion of this. I tried to submit my answers to the questions online on my Facebook page, and I'm going to continue doing that with more questions afterwards. So if you guys have any questions for me, because I know I wasn't here for most of this, please send me a Facebook message, an email, anything, because I'd really love to answer more of those questions and make sure that you know my stance on those issues. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, let's give a hand to all the candidates that were here upstage. They did an amazing job having this debate tonight. And after a very long week, this is the end of all debates. So the debates are now officially all done. We do have a Q&A tomorrow from 2:30 to 5:30 in the council chamber, where all candidates will be there to be able to answer some questions that you may have. I want to thank the Cameron Dining, the people who are in charge of Howe Hall for allowing us to have a debate here, as well as the tech crew for allowing us this to be broadcasted. I want to thank everyone who came and everyone who saw online. I want to say thank you to my fellow elections committee members and our CRO, Caitlin. My name is Mark Josie. I've been your moderator. Have a good night.